In the middle of a chaotic battle, a man, covered in mud and water, looked toward his superior and asked, "Should I make a try at the gate, sir?" His face was drenched, and the tension in his voice was clear. But his superior, a man who had seen much more than his fair share of combat, shook his head. "Stay put, and wait for the Sarge," he ordered firmly. A little further down the ditch, another soldier, a young man, peeked out to exchange gunfire with the enemy stationed in the northern tower. His actions were quick, but reckless, and his superior saw it instantly. "Stay down," he shouted, worried for the young man's safety. But the soldier wasn't careful enough. As he brought his gun back up, the enemy rifleman took a shot, and a bullet slammed into the ground just in front of his face. Dirt flew, and the impact caused the young soldier to cry out in pain. He dropped his weapon and clutched his right eye, which was already beginning to bleed. Without hesitation, the man, who was responsible for leading his platoon, crawled through the mud, desperately moving toward his injured comrade. His teeth clenched in frustration and anger as he swore under his breath. But before he could reach the soldier, there was another shot, this one wet and sickening, and the young soldier fell backward into the ditch, his body limp. The man rushed forward, not caring about the risk to himself. He reached his fallen comrade just as the young soldier's one remaining good eye fluttered open and shut, a painful sign of the damage done. The sight of his other eye, destroyed beyond recognition, made the man's stomach twist with disgust. In the midst of the chaos, a shrill sound filled the air, a hand-crank siren echoing through the camp. The man immediately dragged the injured soldier along the ditch, trying to get some cover, hoping to get between them and the rifleman who had taken the shot. He knew he needed to get them to safety. His thoughts were racing as he struggled to move his injured comrade to the gatehouse, hoping it would offer some protection. Meanwhile, another part of the platoon, led by another man, was attacking the northern fence. The man could hear the distant sound of another gunshot and the shattering of glass as another soldier fired at something inside the guardhouse, though he couldn't see exactly what. The man focused on getting the young soldier to safety, and once they were behind some cover, he noticed the wound in the soldier's arm. It was bleeding heavily. Without wasting any time, he pressed his hand against the injury, trying to stop the bleeding. Thankfully, the flow wasn't as dangerous as it could have been. It came steadily, not in quick, erratic bursts, so he felt a bit of relief. "Stay with me," he muttered under his breath, but it wasn't enough to stop the worried gnawing at him. Someone came to a window there. "I missed," another soldier suddenly said, appearing beside them. He was trying to stay focused, but the stress of the situation was clear in his voice. The soldier seemed to be caught up in the confusion, his mind still trying to make sense of what had just happened. The young couple, who had been through so much together, stood close, holding each other in a tight embrace. The woman gently cradled a baby in her arms, the little one resting peacefully against her chest. Despite the chaos around them, they found a moment of calm in each other's presence. They quickly turned and started running toward the pickups that were slowly making their way toward the gate, the sound of the diesel engines echoing through the air, the trucks growling as they moved forward. The trucks were moving, but not fast enough for the urgency of the situation. The sound of their engines mixed with the tense atmosphere, and the couple had to hurry, knowing that time was running out. The man, leading the way, didn't look back, but he could feel the weight of the moment. He didn't want to waste any time, and every second felt like it could mean the difference between safety and danger. But then a voice called out from behind them. Paulus, the man, who had been walking a few steps ahead, turned sharply at the sound of his name being called. The voice was familiar, and he knew it came from his superior. He stood still for a moment, his body still tense, as the truck stopped just in time for the woman to climb in with the baby. Turning to face the man who had called him, he stood tall and waited for the next words. "Sir," he asked, his voice respectful yet tinged with curiosity. He had no idea what his superior might want in this chaotic moment. With a brief pause, the man's superior looked at him, a small, almost congratulatory smile forming on his face. "Congratulations," he said simply. The words hung in the air for a moment, the unexpected praise hanging between them. The young man, though tired and focused on the danger around them, felt a mix of surprise and relief. The praise wasn't something he had expected, especially not in the middle of such a tense situation. But there it was, a small gesture of recognition for everything they had been through. The young man nodded, acknowledging the words, though he didn't have much time to dwell on them. The truck was already moving, and there was no time to lose. His thoughts quickly turned back to the safety of the woman and child, and the urgency of getting out of danger. The war around them wasn't over, and every moment mattered. He knew they had to keep moving, keep fighting for survival. As the couple climbed into the truck, and it slowly began to pull away, the young man watched them go. His mind was already shifting, thinking ahead to the next step. There was no time to waste. The future, uncertain and filled with danger, loomed ahead, and he could feel the weight of it pressing on him. But for just a moment, as he watched the truck fade into the distance, he allowed himself a brief breath of relief. They were safe for now, and that was enough. The fight wasn't over, but in that small moment they had made it. In a rugged camp by the Lake of the Cherokees, a military group prepared for their challenging mission. The camp, bustling with activity, was a mix of teepees, tents, and wagons, nestled around a stream flowing into the lake. Nearby, eagles fished beneath the ruins of an old dam, echoing the swift and purposeful movements of the soldiers. These troops, tasked with scouting the enemy territory and protecting human settlements, operated on the edges of danger. Their primary goal was to gather intelligence and warn of any looming threats from the oppressive Korean forces waiting to attack. Amid this tense setting, a conversation unfolded between a commanding officer and a young lieutenant. The officer commended the lieutenant for his recent success in battling dangerous creatures called reapers, though the young man humbly downplayed his achievements. Exhaustion was evident in his demeanor, but he remained focused as they discussed strategic decisions. The officer shared his insights on a potential attack on an enemy stronghold, emphasizing the importance of boldness and leadership. The lieutenant, despite his fatigue, showed his dedication by prioritizing his duties. He visited his platoon, who were celebrating a recent wedding within their ranks. The joyous atmosphere was a brief respite from the harsh realities of their mission. The lieutenant spoke with his platoon sergeant, reflecting on their challenging journey back from enemy territory. Despite the dangers they faced, their cautious approach ensured the safety of their group. Later, the lieutenant turned his attention to a group of refugees rescued from enemy lands. These individuals, weary and haunted by their experiences, recounted stories of hardship and fear. Among them was an eccentric older man who rambled about his time working in a rail yard and encountering a mysterious armored train. His cryptic tale hinted at a deeper mystery, but the lieutenant struggled to piece it together amidst his growing exhaustion. Despite the overwhelming demands of his role, the lieutenant's commitment to his mission remained unwavering. Even as he yearned for rest, he continued to gather information and support his team, embodying the resilience and determination required in such a perilous environment. The young man found himself exhausted from relentless training, so much so that he couldn't find time to visit a distant woman he cared for deeply. Communication between them dwindled, and the letters they once exchanged became infrequent. The woman, youthful and beautiful, eventually drew the attention of a well-dressed sergeant from a prominent military unit. Torn between jealousy and genuine hopes for her happiness, the man wrestled with his feelings, uncertain about where his heart truly stood. As he sat on the hard wooden surface of a wagon, the springs groaning beneath him, his mind drifted to the problems at hand. The ramblings of a peculiar individual haunted his thoughts, particularly about a mysterious group called the Twisted Cross. From what little he knew, they were feared in the territories controlled by powerful overlords. He recalled a chilling encounter with one of their members during a past mission, a person who seemed human but craved blood like a beast. Now, these individuals lurked near the borderlands, heightening his unease. Despite his restless thoughts, sleep finally claimed him beneath a star-filled sky. But it was short-lived. A young boy abruptly woke him, speaking of an approaching enemy force, a horde of strange creatures, advancing quickly from the south. The boy, eager and full of energy, had been sent by a superior officer to deliver the urgent news. The man wasted no time, quickly instructing his comrades to prepare for action. He thanked the boy for the message, cautioning him to move carefully in the darkness. The camp sprang to life as orders were given. Supplies, ammunition, and rations were to be prepared, while draft animals were gathered in case a swift retreat became necessary. The man moved with urgency, his calm and collected demeanor masking the tension in the air. He addressed his team, issuing clear instructions as the camp buzzed with activity. Approaching his commanding officer's tent, he learned more about the situation. Scouts had spotted the enemy crossing a river on strange, worm-like creatures. This mobility suggested they were advancing swiftly, possibly planning an attack. The officer, however, saw an opportunity to turn the tables. They would prepare defenses on a nearby hill, a natural stronghold. The man suggested avoiding unnecessary risks, arguing that a tactical retreat could save lives. But the officer was resolute, determined to stand firm and strike back. Despite his reservations, the man accepted his orders and returned to his platoon. The troops were already bustling, discussing how best to transport supplies to the hilltop. Among them, women and children worked quietly, sharing food and preparing for the coming ordeal. A young girl darted through the camp, chasing after a chicken, a stark reminder of the innocent lives at stake. He pushed such thoughts aside, focusing on the task ahead. With his team organized, he supervised the loading of wagons, ensuring essential supplies like ammunition and grenades were safely handled. The plan was straightforward. Supplies would be ferried in stages to the hill, where defensive positions were being fortified. The livestock and non-combatants would follow, creating a temporary sanctuary atop the rocky terrain. As dawn broke, the camp moved like a well-oiled machine. Men wielded axes to clear paths, while others guided wagons laden with goods. Despite the looming threat, a sense of determination united them. The man remained vigilant, overseeing every detail to ensure their survival. While doubts lingered in his mind, he knew they had no choice but to face whatever